Talking about my generation. Things ain't cool at all. Talking about my generation. If I die before I get old. Talking about my generation. It's my generation. Don't you all fade away. I said, don't try and dig what we all talking about my generation. Trying to cause talking about my generation. Talking about my generation. My generation.
It's those opening chords, really. I mean, if you can't get off on those early chords, then actually you shouldn't be listening to rock and roll at all. You should go and take up needlework or something.
Very first ever record as the U, a song called Can't Explain, number 14 in the track.
Immediately you're open to a really new and interesting kind of way of writing.
Got a feeling beside. Can't explain.
The power that they'd managed to get onto tape was incredible.
I feel hot and cold.
The simplicity of the sound they made, you know, the one guitar, bass and drums, great sound, great song, bam, straight in there, you know.
I feel good now, baby. Can't explain. I'm dizzy in the head now. Feeling bad. Things you said.
The Who had previously been known as the High Numbers and were a mod band in northwest of London, west of London they were playing. And they were spotted by Chris Stamp, the brother of Terence Stamp, and Kit Lambert, who was the son of Constance Lambert, the opera singer. They were in a management partnership looking for a band. They saw the High Numbers and saw the potential in them at once. People knew who the High Numbers were, and they tied themselves very much to the mod movement. They had a single called Zoot Suit. It's exactly what the mods used to wear. So they were right into that scene, which was exactly what Stamp and Lambert were looking for, because they wanted a band with a fan base that they could work with. But of course they knew they had to expand that. And Can't Explain was the first attempt really to broaden them out a bit.
Can't explain. I think it's love. I said to you when I feel blue. Can't explain. Yeah, you I said, girl.
It's a great pop single, and it was the first single that they had. It's a pretty good way of introducing yourself to the world, I think.
The perfect introduction to a career that took off from that moment, and in a way everything was built on that one single.
The basic chord structure is a very simple three-chord rock and roll structure of the verse, which is the chord of E major, the chord of D major, the chord of A major, and once again the chord of E major. Now that you'll hear in hundreds, literally hundreds of songs, and it's basically comes from a blues structure. But then what Pete Townshend did after that was he decided to create a little section that would take him up to the bridge and therefore onto the chorus, which are the same chords as the verse. So he would then go from the E major to the D major to the A major to a B major, which would then allow him to go to this bridge, which would then go E major, C sharp minor seventh, A major, back up to B major, back to the chorus. The only other part of the song is a little solo where it just stays in E.
band used their bass guitarist, John Entwistle, more to supplement Pete Townshend's guitar playing as a rhythm guitar more than a bass, which is why, as obviously the Who's music developed, Entwistle's bass becomes very much a singular instrument instead of part of the rhythm section.
It's a very simple song from a musical structure, yet somehow there's lots of little things going on, the little harmonies, and you know, the question and answers between Townshend and Roger Daltrey are fantastic. And when I heard it, it was rather like I'd found my family, I'd found my tribe. It was the sort of the missing link between the music I was being taught at school and the music that I wanted to play.
It's all about frustration and not being able to explain how you feel about things and coping with life's problems when you're a West London teenager, maybe dabbling in pills, spending lots of money on clothes, riding scooters. It was an anthem for the mods, and as such it made a tremendous impact, because not only was it a very exciting performance by The Who, it also defined their image.
Lyrics about a tongue-tied boy who can't explain what he wants to say to his girlfriend. I mean, who can't relate to that?
It brought everybody together as well. It gave you a voice as youth.
It was about being a kid growing up in that part of London and what it was like, you know, and then they would always kind of refer back to the influences that they knew best to draw their best material out of. And that's really what The Who were talking about.
I can go any way, we are two. I can live anyhow, we don't lose. I can go any way, anywhere, anyhow, anywhere I choose. Do anything, right or wrong. I can talk anyhow, get along. Don't care anyway, never lose. Anywhere, anyhow, anywhere I choose. Nothing gets in my way, not even locked doors. Don't follow lines that been laid before. I get along way out there, anyway, anyhow, anywhere.
I think in many ways it was probably the first single that actually captured their live performance, because in the middle of the song there's a solo, but it's not a solo in the normal sense of the word. Keith Moon's taking a drum solo. Pete Townshend sounds like he's smashing his guitar up with feedback, and you know, John Entwistle is making the most tremendous noise on the bass. And it probably is precisely what used to happen when you saw them live. Anarchy.
For someone to be telling you, you know, you can go any way, anyhow, anywhere, you can do anything, that kind of sentiment, we like that. We like that a lot. And yeah, I don't remember that being their greatest single, but you know, at least it kept them in the public eye.
I used to go and see the band playing live at the Marquee and all their clubs, the small club dates, and people adopted each new Who song with great joy. It was like, of course, a celebration when Pete came out with another great new song.
The Who's early singles just sort of captured the zeitgeist, and again, I mean, Townshend straight out the blocks was just a brilliant songwriter. You know, who perhaps has never, everyone looks at Lennon and McCartney and Jagger and Richards as being the prime songwriters, but those guys have been around for a few years by this point, and if you look at, of course, the very early careers of the Beatles and the Stones, it was all cover versions that they were primarily doing. Although the Who included some covers in their early material. Really, Townshend was very, very prolific and very mature already as a songwriter, and that's, you know, the same perhaps as Ray Davies in the Kinks was, and that's why these early examples of Who singles are sort of so powerful and still sound so good today.
Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere. The title came from Pete Townshend, who was stoned one night listening to Charlie Parker. And when he woke up in the morning, those 3 words were written down on a piece of paper next to him. And so he thought that he would make a song out of that, which is literally what he did. I think because the song grew out of the title that Townshend had found, as it were, and so they simply made up words to go along with it. It doesn't actually have the subtlety or the mystique of I Can't Explain, which is saying something. Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere is just, it's a statement.
I can do what I want. It's basically like fuck off to everybody, you know. And that came through in their lyrics and their music, everything. Fantastic melody.
Where do you want it?
Get right there. You guys sure swampy. They look after us on this show.
You know, you guys are really too much, and I want to introduce you to the guys individually in the Who, because you never get to know their names. You know them as the Who. Everybody says Who, and you say, you know, what's your name?
Pete.
Pete
Townshend, yeah.
Pete, and where are you from, Pete?
London.
From London?
Yeah.
London where?
London, England.
Hey, where'd you learn to play, you know, that's a wild style of playing. Where'd you learn to play the guitar like that?
That was bowling.
Bowling. Bowling. Yeah, I could tell. Now we move right along. Right over here, and you're
John.
You're John.
John.
And you're from
London, sir.
From London too.
Yeah.
And you must be Roger.
I must be.
Who are you?
Yeah.
You're Roger.
I'm Roger.
And where are you from?
Oz.
Roger. Here's Roger from Oz. And over here, the guy plays the sloppy drums. Follow the yellow brick road. What's your name?
Keith.
Keith?
My friends call me Keith. You can call me John.
Okay, John. I just soon call you Roger. Roger from Oz. What's the next song you're gonna do?
My generation.
Your generation.
Yeah.
Well, I can really identify with that because I really identify with these guys. I dig them. And this is
You know, you got sloppy stage hands around here.
Okay, that's enough! They're gonna sing My Generation. This song really goes, and you're gonna be surprised what happens because this is excitement, and hit it. My Generation.
People try to put us down. Just because talking about my generation. Things ain't cool at all. Talking about my generation. I die before I get old. Talking about my generation.
The statement, you know, just the name alone, My Generation, it was, Townshend was setting himself up as a spokesperson for all of us. And we needed people like him to do that. He's brilliant. We thought he was a hero at the time. Very much so.
Why don't you all fade away? Yeah, don't try and dig what we all talking about my generation. I'm trying to cause a big sensation. Talking about my generation.
The thing I loved about My Generation was the fact that, you know, they were using a stutter in the vocals. It was unheard of, you know. And I remember loving it, the fact that Roger would sing, why don't you all and of course I thought he was going to say fuck off, but it was fade away, which was just wonderful.
No one had ever written anything like that before, and it was a real demonstration for young kids. I think it's still a highly apt song today for most children.
They were looking for tricks to make the song work, and the vocal stammer came up because it really it's about a pill. It's a pilled up mod. If you suffer from amphetamine overdose, you will stammer. And Roger Daltrey could relate to this instantly. But he didn't like doing it. He thought that it was maybe taking the mickey out of the people who were buying his records. He was a bit careful about that. But obviously the managers thought this will be a great gimmick. And it was. It worked really well. Apart from the fact that, of course, the second week on Top of the Pops, the producer got loads of letters saying, "Dear sir, my little boy stammers and I do not think this record is funny." So they had to kind of override that. But the song was actually so strong and it's such an anthem that that wasn't hard to do.
It was just perfect, really, for The Who, that they were summing up this kind of anti-establishment, anti-older generation vibe, telling the rest of the world to clear off.
It's the title of the first album. It's the mod album. You know, it's the only album The Who made when they were mods. And it's an explosive, I mean, for a mod band, it's almost a heavy metal song. You know, it's this sort of odd juxtaposition of style and content. And everything about that first album sort of put The Who in their place in London at that perfect time, better than any album of its time around that time did for any other band. There they were on the front cover, looking sharp suited, you know, the Union Jack jacket, absolutely everything about The Who. It said, this is us. It spoke to the kids that bought it. It's them. It's, you know, we're all the same together. This is it. This is what's going on. It's happening and it's right now. And I don't think anything's ever quite captured anything in the way that, you know, it wanted to say that. Perhaps the Sex Pistols' Nevermind the Bollocks album in 1977 was of a similar, sort of, had a similar impact and appeal. But, I mean, that was a long, long way down the line, and that was, what, sort of 12 years down the line.
It was the album, actually, that most of the punks, 10 years later, that was why The Who were never regarded as boring old farts, because The Who were punks 10 years before they were punks.
If you notice that the Rolling Stones and the Beatles both immediately start to get a little rockier, more guitar influenced in their music, after the Who and the Kinks have kind of appeared on the scene. Plus, also, My Generation is just a brilliant song. I mean, it's just a short, sharp blast of energy. You know, it's an adrenaline rush. You know, you can feel the cheap speed that fueled the writing of the song.
What made it so brilliant was the fact that it was immediately jarring. It really clanged on your nerves and it made you sit up and take notice.
And it's done in such a sort of swagger. It's wonderful. It's just wonderful. I mean, it's a thumbprint, you know, of music, a photograph of music that had, you must remember, this had not happened before, what we were hearing. It hadn't happened before, you know. You'd had Elvis and, you know, you'd had some blues and you'd had a bit of rock and roll. But you hadn't had something quite as raw and energetic, and it was British. It wasn't American, and it had its own stamp.
It's made it the perfect anti-pop song, which made it the perfect pop song for a certain generation.
Try and dig what we all talking about my generation. Try to cause talking about my generation. Talking about my generation.
The other great trick they used in My Generation was the bass solo.
They had this massive wall of equipment, which were like almost like 2 4x12 cabinets in one. The sound was louder than any other band you had ever heard.
much do you personally make, and what is your gross income for a typical week?
It's fantastically hard to say, you know. I'm sorry.
And of course it became the focal point of the destructive stage act, the famous auto-destruction, a mixture of pop art and God knows what other kind of art. But the idea was that somehow wrecking things and smashing things up was an artistic statement. And whether the Who invented that or whether they drew it from other sources, I don't know, but it was certainly very effective. And my generation was kind of the Who's auto-destructive anthem.
Our actual intention is to play out all the adrenaline and all the aggression and show the audience that you are a frustrated character, that you do want to get something out of your system and you do want to do it in front of them. And it's got much more to do with art and music than people imagine. Much, much more to do with pop music than anything else.
My personal motivation on the stage is quite simple. It consists of a hate of every kind of pop music and a hate of everything our group has done, really. You get higher and higher and you're at the peak of a crescendo, for example, or the peak of a recording career, and you find yourself chopping away at your own legs, sort of auto-destructive music. I prefer to be in this position, it's more exciting.
It was appropriate for that time because it was so different. And I think if you tried to do that now, you know, people smashing equipment and stuff, it would just come across, you know, like some rich kid spoiled brat. But in those days, it had that beautiful kind of anarchic edge to it.
Smashing the equipment kind of started when they were playing the Marquee in London's Wardour Street one night. And Townshend, who was usually pretty active on stage, and it was a fairly cramped stage, was trying to turn around, so he lifted his guitar neck up and he jammed it through the tiles in the ceiling.
The neck broke off because Rickenbackers are made out of cardboard. and everybody started to laugh. They're all kind of going, yeah, that would teach you to jump around like a lunatic and teach you to be flash. So I thought, what do I do? And I had no recourse but to completely look as though I meant to do it. So I smashed his guitar, yeah, jumped all over the bits, and then picked up my 12-string and carried on as though nothing had happened. And the next day the place was packed.
And the whole thing developed from there. And it was usually a pretty spontaneous act, and it was always done at the end of the show. My generation was always the last song in the show, and was therefore the perfect opportunity, particularly the way the song ends. The song ends with this just kind of gigantic thrash, at which the drums are herring around the place, guitar chords crashing everywhere. So it was just an ideal moment for Keith Moon literally to kick the hell out of his drums, and for Townshend to slash away at the guitar and then take it off and smash it on the floor. I mean, if you smashed it fairly gently on the floor, you got a great noise out of it. You didn't actually get a much better noise when the thing broke, but it just looked more spectacular. And meanwhile, Daltrey would be whirling his microphone around and smashing it against the cymbals. So the whole thing was just this huge cacophonous row, and a great way to end a show. And for The Who, of course, it unleashed a whole bunch of frustration, which just seemed to be in their nature.
Notice John Entwistle never smashed up his instruments because he liked his bass guitars too much. But consequently, what it did was they were doing something they couldn't afford to do. Kit Lambert, I think, who was their manager-producer at the time, was constantly having to pay bills, and they started getting their crew to glue guitars back together again so they could actually use them, because they couldn't afford to keep buying them. So eventually that huge damage stopped, obviously, because it was just craziness. And of course, when it stopped, all these companies wanted to give them free equipment. They didn't want to smash it up anymore. Although Pete was known even up to Woodstock of, you know, beating the living daylights out of his guitar. And Keith, on occasions, would, you know, kick his way through the drum kit at the end of the show. But why not? That's what Keith did.
There was a period when it went through, it was kind of, they were expected to do it. And that got a bit staged, as it were. But then it sort of passed beyond that. It almost became a ritual at the end of the show. And Townshend started to treat it rather differently. So instead of sort of doing it spontaneously and in anger, he would sort of very deliberately take off his guitar and walk to the front of the stage and sort of hold it up like a kind of sacrificial offering. And then smash it to the floor and walk off. So he could make it look fairly dramatic and ritual, even though it was clearly staged.
It turned into another form of expression for me. It was a gimmick, of course, but it became... Guitar playing is a... Stand-up guitar players, it is a very physical thing, you know. It's... And it... The way you feel and the way you move and the way you move your body and everything is, it's a big part of it. The fact that sometimes to actually pull a string up by the right amount, you have to give it some momentum and stuff like that. You can't play sitting down in the way that you can play standing up. And so for me, all that stuff, all that macho stuff, all became an expression.
It set them apart from the Beatles and the Stones, who were a little bit tame and twee in the way that they were produced. Shel Talmy acknowledged and understood, firstly, that noise was part of their music, and secondly, space within the music actually allowed a pregnant pause where expectation took over. There was a drama about that early stuff from The Who.
I don't think My Generation's a classic album. I think it's a very good album. It's got some great songs on it. I mean, I think typical of the time, it was you had different versions of different albums for England and America. And America would get all the albums with the hit singles on it. England would get a different album, and the singles wouldn't be on it because they'd already been bought and put up the charts anyway. So it's all kind of weird.
Even though it doesn't really figure on lists of top tens and things like that, its influence among musicians was huge because it defined a whole new sound.
It serves its purpose as a fine debut, but it's not a classic album by a long shot. I mean, obviously, the song itself is an absolute classic, and that, you know, they're a really good. Kids All Right is another example of a great song. And you've got to remember that you know this is very early in Townshend's writing career, and he's doing great. I mean, that's, for me, it sets everything up, I think, in a very exciting way for The Who.
I think the album My Generation did more than just set down what The Who were going to be about. It set the start of a whole style of music. I don't think it was even necessarily called rock at that moment as we know it now. It was called pop then. They were looked upon as a pop band, but it wasn't. It clearly wasn't pop. It was something much bigger than that.
It was pop music becoming more conscious of itself. And it was also that generation becoming conscious of itself as it grew up, that post-war generation now into their late teens, kind of defining who and what they were.
I think A Quick One's a great record, and that's where you can start to see all the big ideas that Pete Townshend was going to have and try and develop with The Who, and also with his own music over the years. This is where you all start to see it.
The Who, in their early days, realised very fast that it wasn't about singles. You had to have an album that was cohesive. And they were one of the first bands to do it. Even the Stones and the Beatles in their very early days never really appreciated what an album was. It was all about hit singles. It was only later in their careers that they realised that actually what we want to do is create a cohesive amount of work. Pete Townshend was different. Pete Townshend acknowledged and realised that an album gave you an opportunity to present your songs. It wasn't just about one song, it wasn't about a one-off. So it was the perfect opportunity to say to the world, I'm a songwriter and I'm going to give you 8 or 9 or 10 songs and not just one hit single.
I think you had an album there where you had a series of quirky, almost heavy pop songs, and then you had, you know, a mini epic on there which hadn't been done before. You had a little rock opera. And that worked incredibly well.
John Entwistle started coming through with some good songs. Boris the Spider, which is a great novelty song, but it's actually one of those novelty songs that you can hear over and over. Most novelty songs, once you've heard them 2 or 3 times, that's it. But Boris the Spider has got enough to it that it carries, and it used to become a huge stage favourite. Well, because it was the one time he used to step up to the microphone. Otherwise, he was just hiding at the back next to Keith.
All the bass players used to love Boris the Spider because it went Boris the Spider, boom, 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 boom,
which is very funny, and it's a great sort of slice of sort of the time.
It was like John Entwistle's sort of weird track.
You can start to hear a vaguely more psychedelic influence coming in on a track like that. Where obviously the music that is happening now around Pete Townshend is starting to influence his own writing.
You started to see that, and I suppose I didn't realise at the time that it was Pete Townshend was the musical focus. He wasn't the only writer, of course, but he was the musical focus. He was starting to develop different ideas. And of course his dad was a musician as well, you know, played in the RAF bands, played clarinet, I think it was. So he'd had quite a lot of musical education in his home, which, you know, not lots of other musicians would necessarily have. They might have come from families where, you know, there was no music apart from what they heard in the radio, which was quite limited. So his musical education was beginning to show, and he was experimenting with other ideas.
A Quick One doesn't have the hit singles that the My Generation album did. It could have done. They could have put Happy Jack and I'm a Boy on it that were written around the same time. But at that time, The Who, along with several other bands, deliberately didn't put songs that had been hits onto their albums, because that was what American bands did, and The Who weren't going to be like that. So what that meant was that Pete Townshend had to come up with more songs, and he didn't quite get the standard that he probably was looking for. There were some good ones, songs like So Sad About Us, Run, Run, Run. They're good Pete Townshend songs, but they don't quite have that magic touch that takes them further on.
And of course, the most famous thing for A Quick One is it's got a quick one while he's away.
2, 3.
Her man's been gone for nigh on a year. He was due home yesterday, but he ain't here. Her man's been gone for nigh on a year. He was due home yesterday, but he ain't here. Little girl, it's crying can be heard all around the world.
Well, after the explosive blast of My Generation, their first album, which got everybody talking about The Who, there was this feeling, probably developed between Kit Lambert, their manager, and Pete Townshend, that somehow all this energy, this pent-up energy that The Who had, should be channeled in some way into producing something with more focus, more direction in terms of an album.
The mini opera, A Quick One While He's Away, actually started when they were 10 minutes light on the album. This, of course, was because they weren't going to fill it up with the hits that they'd had, so they needed to write something else. And it was Kit Lambert, whose father had been an opera singer, who suggested that you could make a little pop opera, operetta. It does. It takes the elements from an operetta, kind of late 19th century sort of thing you'd hear in a Paris theatre, and uses all those elements.
Why don't you stop your crying? Here comes Ivor, the dirty old sooty engine driver, to make you feel all right.
And tells, frankly, a fairly ridiculous story of Ivor the engine driver and playing away from home one day.
The whole thing was a kind of comic observation of working class life in the East End, or maybe in the West End, because that's where they all came from.
Townshend's first stab at combining a lot of tunes into a thematic piece. Basically, it's his first mini rock opera.
And it works well, but it's in the context of not a 3-minute track, you know, but an 8-9 minute plus track. And you remember, this is the 60s. Bands like The Who or other bands like them just didn't do this kind of thing. And they'd written a piece which was basically an extended piece of music that worked. I think it worked.
I mean, people might say, well, A Quick One hasn't got many hit singles on it, or pop songs like My Generation did have. That's all well and good, but My Generation didn't have something as interesting as A Quick One While He's Away. I mean, when you listen to stuff like Tommy that he does later on, then of course it pales into insignificance by that. But if you look at it in context, then it's fascinating that already Pete Townshend is and The Who themselves musically are looking to push everything outwards. It's got more of a hard rock edge to it, the album. You know, there's vague psychedelic elements, and of course it addresses the whole idea of doing a rock opera.
Admit, I kissed a few and once did sit on Ivor the engine driver's lap, and later with him had a nap.
It's fun, and the band make it fun, and they clearly enjoy it, and the little tricks they use and the final climax to the song, which all goes into falsetto as they keep repeating the final chorus over and over and over, and they can't quite finish it. Every time you think it's finished, it gets going for one more time for another 10 seconds.
I loved it. I thought it was a great album. I think it was better than the debut, actually. And I don't think it's been given the credit it's been due.
The Who, because immediately they've become the voice of the people, the inarticulate voice of the inarticulate people, if you want, have that image and reputation. But Pete Townshend wanted to grow as a songwriter. He wasn't prepared to sit there and just churn out more and more songs about people want to put us down, I can't actually express my feelings. He could express his feelings, and he started to want to do that. So he was caught between the devil and the deep blue sea with a quick one, because he knew and understood moving too fast would mean that they lose the crowd. On the other hand, if you don't move, you're going to stagnate. In the end, they probably did move too fast for their own good.
Happy Jack is a kid's story on acid, really.
Happy Jack as a song is very much a throwaway psychedelic song. It was about someone ironically happy, not particularly happy, but put on the happy face, as it were. But it had a certain psychedelic edge. And I call it psychedelic rather than psychedelic because I think it's slightly different. It was a Who's take on it.
The great thing about The Who was that they could merge all those kind of different elements. And Happy Jack is where the instrumental elements of The Who just come together so easy that you suddenly realise that they've got themselves a style. Entwistle's fat-sounding bass, Townshend's chord sequences, the way that Daltrey phrases, and of course Moon crashing around all over the place behind. And suddenly the band is just falling into place.
So they rode on his head in the furry donkey.
There was a lot of songs and films and books and TV programs and plays at the time being written in this slightly obscure attitude, and Happy Jack was one of those sort of things. It was a slightly obscure song. It was a pretend story.
A Happy Jack is that's more of a sort of frivolous, sort of psychedelic kind of sort of song.
But it was something that made sense, even though you didn't know what it was about.
I think it confused people a little bit, because they seemed rather, some people thought they were rather throwaway and not really worthy of The Who. In retrospect, actually, they do have a certain charm about them, but it wasn't, I mean, people expected so much from The Who. They wanted an explosion of violence. They wanted My Generation, 6 times a night. But you can't do that. You can't sustain a band as a live act or as an album-making group just with 2 or 3 songs all the same style. Obviously, Pete was thinking about diversifying.
They couldn't prevent Jack from being happy.
This group has had no history,
well.
and I've hated it ever since I began.
Since I've been doing the bulk of
the
the
thing
writing,
is that he does no writing, and I have to do most of it. The thing is,
most of the lyric work.
he keeps he does the lyric.
I used to wake up in the morning. I used to feel so bad. I got so sick of having sleepless nights. I went and told my dad. He says, son, now here's some little something, and stuck them on my wall. And now my nights ain't quite so lonely. In fact, I don't feel bad at all. I don't feel bad at all. Pictures of Lily made my life so wonderful.
Pictures of Lily is another of those songs that just comes together so easily. The Who are in a bit of a purple patch at this point, and they've got their trademarks down. They kind of know each other's styles. Townshend can write with this in mind, and it just all clicks together. The great thing about it, it's sort of a little mini opera, but it's not pretentious. The one great thing about The Who is that what they could have been extraordinarily pretentious, particularly the ideas that Townshend was coming up with. In fact, later on he probably did get pretentious. But at this point, because everything's kept so tight, this is a mini opera which is just 3 minutes long, tells its little story, and then that's it, it's gone. The song is full of dissonant guitars and lots of strange French horn trills coming from John Entwistle, who's getting quite into his French horn by now. Which is probably appropriate given that the song is actually about masturbation.
We all know what it's about now, but I'd never worked that one out when you were listening to it as a child. But you know, it's about masturbation, isn't it? And looking at girls and pretty pictures of girls. And had I known, I probably would listen to it a lot more closely.
I mean, Townshend, a lot of Townshend's writing, early writing, would also sort of, he wasn't afraid to flirt with any kind of sexual imagery that had obviously been around him as a, you know, when he was younger. So Pictures of Lily, of course, is all about having a tug to a porn mag.
I wouldn't say they were average pop songs by any means. They still had interesting ideas, strange, rather quirky little songs though they were. Quite what direction Pete was going in with those.
I think it was just him, you know, tipping his big toe into the water of that area and seeing how it worked, because he could.
What The Who never lost was that driving urgency behind their music. So that was always the basis, you know, that kind of that raging fury that starts with My Generation, you know, and that's the basis for a lot of their singles.
What about musical quality, though? You said that you don't think your group has got any, but why don't you try and give it some?
It's not got anything to do with quality. We're more interested in production and keeping moving, you know, and I think quality leads to a sort of statism, you know, really.
But what do you mean by that? I mean,
well, it means that if you steer clear of quality, you're all right, you know. No, really, this is the truth, you know.
How long do you think audiences are going to go on accepting this this music that hasn't got any quality? Don't you think that people are going to suddenly come to the conclusion?
What's got quality in the pop business? You know, what's got quality in anything, you know? I mean, it's just a sort of a matter of standards, you know, and I mean, standards are exploited in thousands of books, you know. You can, if you're after sort of standards, you can find them anywhere, you know, but in the pop business, you know, we're lucky in that there are no standards, you know.
Substitute again has that fantastic ability of Pete Townshend to be wry, sly and humorous at the same time. To come up with a line like "I was born with a plastic spoon in my mouth" is a wonderful way of representing itself, because it turned the whole thing about born with a silver spoon on its head. And also it was the beautifully observed frustration again about, I'm just really a stand-in. People don't really want me for what I am. They want me for what they think I represent. And it was Pete Townshend starting to show the sort of frustration that was very personal. It was, don't take the superficial, look beneath the surface, because there is something there that you'll want to understand and relate to. And of course, it had a wonderful melody. And again, it had that fantastic vocal harmony on the chorus, which is Roger Daltrey almost harmonizing with himself. You hear it in your head as a harmony, but in reality, it isn't. And that was the beauty of what The Who were doing at the time. They were very clever pop performers who actually were doing something that no one else was really attempting.
It's this whole pretense. They were getting across the fact that they were trying to better themselves, but everything wasn't as it seemed. And it's extraordinary lyrics for the time.
Substitute is the best song that Pete Townshend had written since My Generation. The opening chord sequence is actually one that he fell in love with, and you'll find it used in all kinds of Who songs. Lyrically, it's a story about denial, really.
they were pop songs that actually said something. You know, it wasn't, "I love you, baby, you're so sweet, you know, suck my feet." It was something that had some beef to it. So it would, you know, we felt that they were very fresh, very new, and spoke for our generation.
I mean, again, it's more of that thunderous kind of rock that the Who would package into sort of like 3.5 minutes.
It turned, I think, the Who from where they could have been stamped with they're a pop act that are a bit weird and they won't last long, into actually we're not a pop act and we're a lot deeper.
The fact that you've got a quick one while he's away on a quick one, and you've got Rael on Sell Out. You know, these are the big indications of where Townshend would go. I mean, he never loses sight of the fact he can also write a bloody good pop or rock song, but he can also do all this wonderful sort of connecting music that can link whole bits together, should he so please. To say that the Who Sell Out is low on ideas is like saying it's easy to catch AIDS off the Pope. I mean, it's just like, it's the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard in your life.
I know you've deceived me, now here's a surprise. I know that you have, 'cause there's magic in my eyes. I can see for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. Oh yeah.
I can see for miles. Just monumental Who classic.
I never see you when deliberately you put things in my way. Well, here's a...
I think it's possibly a milestone for the Who, quite honestly.
that smile, because all the while I could see for miles and miles.
The Who Sell Out is over brimming with ideas. It remains one of my personal favourite albums, but it's a wonderful example of the whole psychedelic era that was going on at the time.
I mean, when I heard that, I flipped completely. I just lost it. I went, this is the future, this is what I want to do. And it was only 3 chords, you know, but it was just the power and the space and what it created. And this was the first time, really, that the Who said, this is where we're going. Are you coming with us?
I could see for miles and miles. I could see for miles and miles. I could see for miles and
Keith Moon's drums are double-tracked, if you listen carefully on it, with one quite a lot softer behind the other. But it means that there appears to be more control over it, because he's double-tracking to it, I suppose.
Unfortunately, the Who never had a #1 single, which, I mean, is a sad indictment of the pop charts, because Townshend was such a brilliant and prolific writer of great pop and rock songs that he should have had a hatful of #1s. But sadly, I Can See for Miles got to #2, and that was the highest that he ever got. But I mean, you listen to something like Harmonia, City in the Sky, or I Can See for Miles. And this is the Who at their psychedelic prime.
I think the Who sellout was meant to be a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek sort of observation about the things that you were expected to do to be successful in the swinging 60s. You know, like advertising was obviously very important. So they sort of grasped the nettle and said, okay, we'll do an album which is all about product placement and about plugging and about jingles and advertising on radio. So it was a funny idea.
What the Who were trying to do was to make a pirate radio program and put little jingles and ads in between the songs, just like pirate radio did. And they achieved this. They did it with a kind of loving affection, which is why it works. Sort of taking the mickey out of it at the same time. But because they liked pirate radio so much, and of course because pirate radio had been so good for the Who, they did it with a certain amount of affection, and it worked.
Mary Ann with a Shaky Hand, which I guess you have to say is another song about someone giving you a wank.
I danced with Linda, I danced with Jean, I danced with Cindy, then I suddenly seen Mary Ann with a Shaky Hand. It's wonderful, and it's a beautiful little song, you know.
But I think the album, while not a classic, and it's not a great rock album as such, nevertheless it has great entertainment value.
It's not a bad album. I prefer A Quick One while he was away, but that's very much a personal point of view. And then after this period, of course, the band got more cohesive and heavier. I mean, they were a completely transformed band.
It's just a great album of its time. I mean, you listen to it and it takes you right back to the swinging London. At the end of the day, you know, you listen to it for the songs that are on there, and the songs that are on there are better than the songs that are on the Quick One. So therefore, it's a better album than A Quick One. And that was a better album than My Generation. So it's going up the whole time.
Just moved into Turbo Overdrive, and I Can See for Miles. And then after that, I mean, some of the material that came out after that was just stunning, just stunning.
Magic Bus was the kind of song that you could fit into a set and play for 20 minutes and keep the audiences happy. Although I'm sure Pete would be highly offended if he heard me saying that, but that was a bit of a throwaway, much more than Happy Jack or Pictures of Lily, which were concept songs.
It was an equivalent in a way to the Magical Mystery Tour of the Beatles.
It never really worked as a studio track. I think there were 2 different versions of it around as well, and they couldn't quite nail it. It seemed to sound a bit sort of thin, although Townshend, he certainly proved that you could get a pretty hard rocking sound out of a full-bodied, open-bodied guitar, a sort of acoustic guitar sound. He got a great sound from it.
Yeah, Magic Bus was launched at the time with a big bus ride around London and free Magic Buses. I had my Magic Bus for many years afterwards, a little red model bus. It's funny how you remember these promotion gimmicks that people give away, but I thought it was a bit of a hoo-ha, really, about not very much. It wasn't a great theme. It's the old Bo Diddley riff. It went on interminably. It didn't seem to go anywhere, and yet it remains in the set for years and years, and seemed to be very popular with the band and their fans. But I think for discerning Who fans, it wasn't much to write home about.
it, I want 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 it, I want.
Magic Bus isn't typical Who, but it's typical Townshend, in the sense that it's a Bo Diddley. You know, I want to know what I want to be, like, you know, the Rolling Stones. They give you love to, so it's Bo Diddley, you know, not fade away, all this sort of stuff. And then live, Roger used to play harmonica. He's a mean harmonica player, he's good. But it wasn't, I mean, for the bass and drums, it was nothing. Usually the bass and drums in the Who is just violent, you know, and it was them doing nothing. And it was one that they used to play a lot live. And it was, I think, after the Who Cellar, it was the single after the album, and it was a taster of what was to come. You know, you'd had I Can See for Miles, and then you got this. It was slightly American because it had that hand, what you call the hand jive, the guitar part. Dink, 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 dink. It's called the hand jive after Bo Diddley.
But where Magic Bus really came into its own was live, and it became an enormous stage favourite, because it was one of those that you could extend ad infinitum, really. Once you get that Bo Diddley rhythm going, and Townshend could just play around with it, little chord riffs, and it gave a chance for Daltrey to strut around the place, and even play harmonica, go back to being an R&B singer, which is kind of how he'd started. So they could relive all that, and it gave everybody just a chance to stretch out, as opposed to the kind of quite tight pop format they were generally working in.
This is the overture, and we expect Keith Moon, our conductor, to be here for the overture of Tommy the Rock Opera. And here he is.
All right, lads, now, quiet now, and that audience quiet now. Rock opera. Still, very serious. Complete and utter.
I'd say they were quiet as they're going to be.
All right, come in, shut up, will you? For Christ's sake.
Townshend had only hinted at what he could do, you know, throughout the 60s. Suddenly he arrives with Tommy and everyone's like, my God, what is this?
The whole thing was a big gamble, a big risk, but they went for it and they did Tommy, which proved to be a huge success.
Tommy is probably the greatest Who album ever, personally speaking. I know some people regard Quadrophenia as being better. I think Tommy is the moment they reached a remarkable peak. It's a great story as well. Deaf, dumb and blind kid who becomes a messiah. It's an amazing story. It's got a lot of Townshend in it, obviously. It's rooted in his childhood and his upbringing. The songs make it work, the cohesiveness make it work. There's a darkness to the whole thing, and you just listen to the whole album as an entity or as individual songs, and it's absolutely brilliant.
You know, it was just huge. You know, I mean, it's a lot of autobiographical elements from Townshend's life obviously are in there, but it's not just what he says, because I mean, he uses that a lot of his own stuff to sort of tell story up to a point, and then it explodes into this fantastic realm of this, you know, this deaf, dumb and blind kid who happens to be amazingly good at pinball, and then sort of creates some weird cult, and it all just goes like, you know, a bit haywire.
And I think it was Townshend trying to get a thread to run through all sorts of different songs that would make sense and be theatrical. I think it might have been over complex in some ways. I think the songs were great. The storyline for me was a little weaker than the songs. But of course for the time, nobody had done a job of a rock opera with anything like the inspiration and the cohesiveness that Tommy has.
See me, feel me, touch me, heal me. Tommy, can you hear me? 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 Can you hear me?
It's the music more than anything on Tommy that you know, that's the most amazing thing about it, because it's up until now, you know, he's toyed with themes and ideas and sounds, and then suddenly just goes hell for leather on this enormous double album.
But every song on the record is great in its own right. You put them all together and it works as an opera. It is a rock opera. It was the first real rock opera that worked. And Townshend especially spent ages making sure that the whole thing flowed. And there is such a flow to it. It does go through dramatic peaks and troughs. And you put it all together, and at the end of it, you feel exhausted and you feel it's been worthwhile listening.
It is. It's still probably one of the finest examples of the rock opera that you'll ever get. And it was the first real big stab at doing it as well.
Giving it the phrase a rock opera meant that all sorts of people would pay attention to it who perhaps wouldn't ordinarily. So it made them listen. And of course the pompous ones said, oh, I don't think we've got the right kind of operetta and aria there. Well, of course you haven't. It's a rock opera. The Who performed it at two of the biggest festivals they played at the end of the 60s. One was Woodstock and the other was the Isle of Wight. And those two festivals not only were seen by probably 1 million people who were at both of them in total, but both of them then appeared on film, and of course millions more saw it. So the opera got huge exposure.
He stands like a statue, becomes part of the machine, feeling all the bumpers, always play clean, plays by intuition, the digit counts a small, that deaf, dumb, and blind kid, sure please me.
Now, the interesting thing about Pinball Wizard is it starts with a B suspended chord and then goes to a B major chord. So basically it's the third of the major scale. It goes up to the next note, a semitone above, which makes it called a suspended fourth. So it's going from suspended fourth to major in the key of B, and it drops a tone and goes suspended to major. That's in the key of A. Then it drops another tone to G, the key of G, and it goes suspended to major. Then it drops a semitone to F sharp and goes suspended to major. And then you have the big rock lick, which goes B major, A major, D major, E major. Big lick, fantastic. B major, A major, D major, E major. And then it goes E major, F sharp 5, B major. Then to G major, then to D major, suspend it, and then take it back to the major, D. So it's gone through B, A, G, F sharp, G, and D. So musically, it's quite a large range to get from the start of the song into the basic first verse. It's a song that allows dynamics to be in it. So when the verse and the lyrics and the melody has got to get across, the band are more subdued, and then it goes into the sort of typical of the Who. Their choruses have always been tended to be sort of anarchic, and once again, that's what they do in Pinball Wizard. But it's driven very much by the guitars. This song, as you can see, just playing it, physically it's hard to play, and Townshend plays, a lot of his things are physically hard to play. He attacks the guitar when he plays it.
It sort of leaves you breathless, really. You listen to Tommy in one fell swoop. Certainly the album that the Who themselves do, because obviously there's several different versions of Tommy now. There's the Who's own version, there's the soundtrack to the film, there's various different live permutations of it. I mean, and you can listen to either the Who's standalone version or the soundtrack to the film, which features mostly the Who's playing anyway. And it really will leave you breathless, having gone through the whole thing.
It expanded from the rock opera on record, then went into a film, and then other people released a single from it. So, if you look at that by itself, just on the one record, you've got to say, it's got longevity, it's got life to it, shall I say. That's what I'm trying to say. It's got a life of its own.
Tommy the movie was directed by Ken Russell, who put his own lascivious interpretation on the whole thing. Surprise, surprise. Ken Russell is one of those people who he likes to annoy because he knows it teases, almost like a little boy, really. And so he pulled out those elements in it. He brought in his mates, notably Oliver Reed, who he knew could do a good job. He seemed to take a malicious delight in covering Anne Margaret with baked beans. As part of the movie plot, and you wondered where that came from, really, and then you thought, yes, well, he must have looked at the sleeve of The Who Sell Out, their previous album.
I don't really want to say too much bad about Ken Russell, not only because I know him and he's great. I've enjoyed a lot of his filmmaking, but well, let's just say that I recently got hold of the special edition of Tommy on DVD and watched it that night when I got home. I will admit I had a few drinks, and I remember sticking it on and watching it all the way through and rocking out big time to some of the songs on there. But when I got to the end of the film and went upstairs to bed, I was thinking, well, that was a bit crap. So, I mean, I think that's what you think most people's view of the film. But, that's what you think now. It probably blew people away at the time. I mean, because, we obviously like to think we're a lot more sophisticated about these things today. Back in, was it 1970 when Tommy came out? It would have been a major issue, But then when The Song Remains the Same came out by Led Zeppelin, I mean, that was a huge issue as well, and that's pretty shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's extravagant as a movie, and it's I suppose it's exciting. It's a spectacle. But I don't think, story-wise, it for me, it holds together particularly well in the film. And I think there's too many other big, the big acts that were brought in to sing the songs and appear in the film overshadow the story to me.
It would probably have been better if Ken Russell had come up with a story of his own and told Pete Townshend to write some songs for it. That might well have worked better. I think in trying to stretch the concept of Tommy to work as a movie, it actually doesn't do Tommy any favours. In fact, it doesn't do Ken Russell any favours either.
But I think if you look at the Who's first version that they did as a band before it became the film and the soundtrack, then it flows more, I think, as a piece of music. But obviously, then stylistically, it's stuck very much in the area of time in which it was produced. But like I said, it still sounds good to this day. I mean, it can still take your breath away if you listen to the whole thing.
I remember them distinctly performing quite a lot of material from Tommy in the 70s when we played with them in America. And it was absolutely magic. You know, the atmosphere on the stage when they played the whole see me, feel me. I mean, it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Very, very powerful indeed.
Well, a young man ain't got nothing in the world these days. I said a young man ain't got nothing in the world these days.
I think most people would say that Live at Leeds is the greatest rock live album of all time.
This was a live rock band, a hard rock band, who drove, who had dynamism, who had a real sense of clashing and clanging.
Well, you know, in the old days, when a young man was a strong man, all the people, they stepped back when a young man walked by.
The original album was just 45 minutes long. It's now a 2 CD, 2-hour effort with the whole of Tommy in the middle of it and things like that. I actually think it doesn't work as well like that because, I mean, it's all right if you're a bootleg fan, you picked it up at Camden Market or something like that, but for a proper live Who album, the original 45-minute job was short, sweet, and really punched.
To me, the two highlights on Live at Leeds are not Who songs. There's an extended version of Donovan's Young Man Blues and also an extended version of Eddie Cochran's Summertime Blues. And that's when the Who really open up and they jam and they really go for it. And those, to me, are better than their performances of their own songs, because this is when you lose your way in the aggression, the power and passion of the Who.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's electrifying. It just shows you how good the Who were.
But you know, nowadays, it's the old man who's got all the money. And a young man ain't got nothing in the world these days, I say.
The opening track, Young Man Blues, with Daltrey strutting around a bit like Robert Plant and Led Zeppelin, really, which is sort of unaccustomed for him. You don't really think about it. But then the other thing about the Who live was that they were a ferocious band live. And you didn't really get that necessarily from listening. If you'd only heard the Who on record, you would have been blown away to see them live because they put so much energy into it. The Who, they were one of those great bands where they could never be professional enough to put on the same show every night. Most bands, after you've been around for a while, you learn how to put on a professional show below which you don't drop. The Who didn't ever seem to be able to do that. Every time the Who played, there was that kind of sense of anticipation, is this going to be good or bad? It was seldom indifferent. The Who either played a blinder or they were absolutely atrocious. because they didn't know how to be professional. And The Who live at Leeds catches them on a great night.
It's by far and away the best live album they ever made, if not the greatest live album ever has been made.
The Who live at Leeds is one of the great live albums from the end of the 60s, early 70s, because it is genuinely live. Soon after that, technology developed whereby you could overdub your live album. If you got a bit wrong, you were able to overdub it and the audience didn't notice. And from that moment onwards, actually live albums pretty much ceased to be live.
It's one of the first occasions when everybody could understand this is a great rock band, this is the band who could really play. It wasn't just about noise, it wasn't just about trashing, it wasn't just about good songs, it was about people who really understood how to play their instruments and get the best out of a performance.
It's just packed full of good songs. It's a really good live album.
There's some nice stuff there. I mean, I don't know what possessed me to actually start to try to play like that. I suppose it just must have been the influence of Hendrix. Because up to that point, I just wasn't interested in single note work. It seemed mad for me to even try to compete with the likes of Beck and Clapton and Jimmy Page and people like that. I think a lot of the help was when Henry introduced me to that particular guitar.
SG.
The SG, yeah. It fitted my sound.
I mean, what I always loved about Townshend was that he obviously can play some great guitar solos, but he doesn't do the heavy metal Axeman hero thing. So therefore it adds an extra dimension to what the Who do, because they could be as heavy, even as heavy metal as they wanted to. But the way Townshend approached the guitar solo aspect of things has always sort of kept them just a little bit aside, and I really like that. That's one of those things that you really admire about them.
It's big, fat rock sound. That's what you want from a rock and roll record. And Live at Leeds, I think Live at Leeds has got to be probably the best live rock album I've ever heard, because there's been ones that possibly have sounded slicker, but they're not real. This is real. It's as if you're there, which is quite exceptional.
Who's Next is yet another seminal Who album in a line of seminal Who albums. Astonishing, really, how they could do it.
Such an epic landscape of sound, and it really is them opening everything up. And with the exception of Tommy, I say this is the Who's finest work.
Most people will tell you that it's the best Who album there is. Pete Townshend had introduced synthesizers, which was still a relatively new concept in music, and he spent a lot of time working with synthesizers, which obviously intrigued him, seeing how he could develop them into the Who sound.
It grew out of a rock opera that Townshend was trying to write. This one was called Lifehouse, and it made the plot of Tommy read like an Enid Blyton novel, really. Lifehouse was impossible to explain, and yet Townshend became obsessed by it.
And when he presented that to the band, they were like, "No, this is shit." And went off and sulked for a bit, played around with his synthesizers, and then came back with the material that made up Who's Next.
called Barbara O'Reilly, which was the first piece on the album. It was an early exploration of the use of synthesizer. So that was like, this is the new Who.
That is absolutely storming. That's a song that to some extent defines what the Who became in the 1970s and subsequently. It's got that unmistakable keyboard intro and it builds into a soaring song. It's a great epic heavy rock anthem.
Who's Next is bookended by probably two of the finest rock anthems that Townshend ever wrote. At the beginning, you've got Barbara O'Reilly, which starts off with this sort of dancing synthesizer, which is sort of dancing around above these piano chords. And then Daltrey's voice comes in and starts to build the song up to give it some shape. But actually it's Townshend's voice on the chorus that really gives it the punchline. What is it? Don't cry, don't raise your eye, it's only teenage wasteland. What a great descriptive phrase. It's like the Who producing a soundscape in a way.
Just had the most incredible atmosphere on stage, wonderful. I mean, when I saw them perform it when we were playing with them in the 70s in America, it really was one of, you know, the great rock moments for me, I have to say.
It just has such a giant sound, a giant motif, and it stamps The Who as being a band for the 70s as much as they were for the 60s. This wasn't a band running out of ideas.
There's scarcely a dud track on the Who's Next album. Love Ain't for Keeping, great acoustic song. In fact, maybe acoustic, but it certainly rattles the speakers while you're listening to it. And My Wife, John Entwistle's song. John Entwistle just at his paranoid best, really. Nobody could make humour out of paranoia better than John Entwistle could do it.
I think Who's Next is a beautifully spaced album. You've got the soft and you've got the heavy. And you've got tracks like Behind Blue Eyes,
which is really the Who's own answer, or the Who's own version of Sympathy for the Devil. It's kind of dark and mysterious. And yet, when you first listen to it, it doesn't seem like that. It's only when you get beneath the surface, you hear it again, and you think, ooh, what's that about then?
It's exhilarating rock music. And it's the use of the synthesizers as well just embellishes the whole sound. I mean, if you listen to it now, it still really is a fantastic record. You know, Won't Get Fooled Again is probably the greatest song that Who ever wrote. And it's just wonderful, sprawling, lengthy work with a social heart. Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
It goes down low and there's just this synthesizer chipping away, and then it explodes back into this full-on ultra power. Absolute magic, no other word for it, you know.
one of the greatest rock albums of the 70s, without a doubt. I mean, it stands alone with the likes of Led Zeppelin 4 and maybe Hotel California by the Eagles, you know, as albums that absolutely define the rock music that's being made in that era.
On stage, it used to finish as Roger finished that great line, "Meet the new boss, same as the old boss." Townshend, at this point, usually mysteriously disappeared off stage. And when it came to the final chords, there's about 4 or 5 chords at the end that give this terrific ending. And Townshend would rush onto the stage, leap into the air, and deliver the final chord in mid-leap, and then crash down to his knees and sail out the other end of the stage. And it was just such a dramatic finale to The Who.
Quadrophenia is Townshend's ode to his youth, growing up as a mod, and what it was like for kids who grew up in that era.
The Who had been a mod band. Apart from Daltrey, it's doubtful that any of the others were really card-carrying mods in terms of Vespers and Lambrettas and stuff. But that was their audience. They knew about those people. They certainly knew about the lifestyle and the drugs they took, the fashions they wore, things like that, because that had been an integral part of The Who's early career.
I think it was Townshend documenting the history of where the band had come from, where they'd started, you know, who their clan was, you know, who their tribe was, you know.
Whether that quite worked in the early 70s, I wasn't so sure, because it was a bit too early, I think, to be reminiscing about that period of the 60s.
Again, you've got the album The Who put out, which is all their songs. Then you've got the soundtrack album, which features most of the Who songs, and then a batch of other tunes that were of the time, sort of to fit in.
The movie of Quadrophenia actually works better than the album does, mainly because the director, Frank Rodham, he simplified the story so that it becomes a tale of mods and rockers and teenage lust. And that works pretty well.
I'd break your bleeding leg off that. No wonder you wear them big boots, eh?
It's the best bike ever made, mate. I got a ton 5 out of that the other day.
Sure.
Putting that epoxy hairdryer in there.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, that isn't it, is it? I mean, it isn't the bikes, is it? It's the people. And the people who ride these things are states, third-class tickets.
Who what?
Well, rockers, all that greasy hair and dirty clobber, it's diabolical.
I don't give a monkey's arseholes about mods and rockers. Underneath, we're all the same, aren't we?
Yeah, Kev, that's it. Well, I don't want to be the same as everybody else. That's why I'm a mod, see? I mean, you gotta be somebody, ain't you? Or you might as well jump in the sea and drown.
Yeah, that's why I joined the army. To be different. To get away from all this. No matter where you go, there's always some cunt with stars and stripes on who wants to push you about.
It's a film, whereas Tommy is actually just a rock opera put on celluloid, as it were, with using a lot of filmic devices. This is a film with the soundtrack to it, so that's, I think, why it works. A rock opera is really more intended, I think, for the stage. I think Tommy proves that.
The movie catches the spirit of the mod movement and why it existed and what it was getting away from. That stultifying home life in those tiny little terraced houses where you grew up as an adolescent.
Running about on them motorbikes all hours of the night, I'm not surprised. It's not normal.
In the middle of a nice, quiet piece of scenery and kick him to a pub.
Oh, yeah? What's normal then?
Let me do it. I've got some new boots I'd like to try out. That's what I like.
What's that?
Enthusiasm.
And just the sheer frustration of living at home. Quadrophenia, the movie, catches that superbly. And the music works very well for it, because the music it's much more of a soundtrack album than it is a rock opera.
Don't he look smart? Oh, look at the scooter.
Sting makes for a great Ace face in that long leather coat and that sort of sneering look that he could perfect so well. And Phil Daniels as the kind of pilled up mod. His facial expression is just
What you gonna do
superb, and those wide open eyes.
Start a one-man riot? Yeah, I might. But Jim, why'd you chuck in your job? Because I felt like it. Well, you're bloody nutty.
As an album, it doesn't work quite as well as Tommy does. But as a film, it pisses all over it. But it has some of the best individual songs that The Who ever wrote on it. 5:15, for example. You know, Out of My Brain on the Train. It's just something I think quite a few people can relate to. Love, Rain on Me. The Real Me.
Although I think that musically it is in many ways a better album than Tommy. As a concept it flows better, but actually the production is quite muddy when you listen to it, and it doesn't really bring out the drama of the story, partly because it doesn't really let Roger's voice through enough. Roger's voice is quite low in the mix, and Entwistle's bass is quite high in the mix, so it's a bit off kilter there. And this may be because there are quite a lot of sound effects on the album. In fact, the album is riddled with sound effects one way or another. It's almost more of a soundtrack album than it is a rock and roll or a rock opera album, as it were.
It did work as an album. It's not my favourite Who record. I mean, I like the fact that it sort of documents a little bit of history, and in fact it was about mods and rockers.
Funnily enough, I listened to Quadrophenia, the album, more than I listened to Tommy. But I think that's probably because it's got better, or it's got more classic Who tunes on it.
And particularly once John Entwistle had remixed it and brought up the dynamics in it, it worked much better.
The Who by Numbers was, I suppose, distinguished by John Entwistle's rather childlike kind of cover design, which he drew himself. And somehow it sort of summed up the album itself. It was rather unsatisfactory.
Who by Numbers certainly disappointing for me. Yeah, I think for quite a few people. They were having problems by this point. I mean, I think Roger was by now a trout farmer, advertising American Express. Pete was in the throes of heroin addiction. And Keith was losing the plot rapidly, getting up to all sorts of bizarre nonsense with people like Vivian Stanshall and Oliver Reed and anything basically being a great drummer. And I think that when they got back together to do Who by Numbers, you could hear that the Who weren't actually a great rock band at that point, because they'd all forgotten really what they were about and all the excesses that, you know, they're not unique in this happening to them. All the excesses just got too much, and they specifically Townshend, who they needed as a guiding creative light, had lost sight of really of what was going on and what should have been going on, and you can hear it suffers. It's not a bad record, but it hasn't got many brilliant songs on it.
I liked Who by Numbers. I thought it was a good album, but again, it was an album that I think quite obviously was going to be overshadowed by the success of the previous work or previous works. But it actually is a very, very good album.
Yeah, I mean, it's got the great hit Squeeze Box on it, but I think, you know, they'd done so much. They'd, like any band, and any time I talk about bands, the same thing applies. When we're talking about a very successful band, there has to be breathing space. That breathing space may come due to personal problems. It may come due to financial problems, it may come to tiredness. It may just be that they've run out of steam for a little bit. And certainly in those days still, the record contract was a contract, and it meant you had to deliver a record by a particular date. I think very possibly he'd run out of a little bit of steam. But in a sense, that's okay. It's like, you know, as an audience, we need a little break as well, you know. Because when you look at it in the bigger picture, it's still a great record. Still a great record. It's just perhaps not one of their best, that's all.
Few bands get the recognition they deserve for every album that they put out. So, I mean, there are certain ones, I mean, A Quick One and Sell Out, people might tend to overlook just because of the magnitude of what came after. But I think they're essential documents that, you know, any Who fan will tell you that they're really, really strong records. I think My Generation isn't quite as great as it's made out, but it's got that zeitgeist thing about it. You know, yes, Tommy and Quadrophenia are excessive, but in context with what they were, then perhaps they're not. Who's Next is one of the greatest rock albums of the 70s. By numbers isn't. And Who Are You is a lot better than people give it credit for.
Who Are You came out of Pete Townshend's somewhat traumatic meeting with the Sex Pistols at the Speakeasy Club one night in 76, 77, when I think one way or another meeting the Sex Pistols made Pete Townshend totally maudlin, because it kind of reinforced to him how old he was. And there were the Sex Pistols trying to venerate him as being the godfather of punk. And of course, for poor old Pete, that just made him sound old, really. So he landed up getting maudlin and then drunk, and then they had to pull him out of the gutter. But hey, he got a song out of it. And the Who Are You is really, it's addressed to himself. Who am I? What am I doing here? Kind of thing. It's a fitting epitaph for Keith Moon, who just about holds that one together. I mean, it has to be said that on the Who Are You album, his drumming has frankly got pretty sluggish. He couldn't really do it by the end.
It's terrible, really, that Keith Moon died, because you know, it was a sort of it was that through that period where lots of, you know, great rock musicians were dying, and it was pretty much an accident, really. And but yes, it was a fitting swan song in the sense of he went out, you know, after having made a fantastic record, really. So that was good.
Very overlooked. I think the Who, by this point, were kind of seen as sort of rock dinosaurs. So there is a tendency to kind of ignore Who Are You, apart from apart from the title track, because that's still a classic song. And it is. I mean, it showed you they could still write that big rock tune like Won't Get Fooled Again. But there's really interesting music on Who Are You that shows that you know, they were taking on board what was happening around them. And it's a tragedy that Keith did die, because I think it would have been really interesting to see what they would have come up with after this. I mean, I know they did do face dances with Kenny Jones, but it is quite frankly not a brilliant Who album.
Well, they've gone through all sorts of different formations. I mean, Kenny Jones joined, obviously, after a little bit of time when they were thinking about disbanding or staying together, and they decided to stay together. And of course, Kenny came from the Small Faces and the Faces, so he came from that whole generation. He was a mod as well, so it made logical sense, you know.
And Kenny did very well, I thought, but as it turned out, over the months of touring, it seemed that certainly Roger felt that there was he missed that kind of manic dynamic from Keith. It wasn't there. Something that he probably fought against in their early days. He used to complain bitterly about how noisy their drummer was. It made it tough for him to sing over all this racket. But of course, once it had all gone, you realise that there was that sort of extra dimension to Keith's playing that injected the dynamic energy into the Who. Nobody else could equal that.
And his drumming was also, what I love in drumming is sloppy but tight, if you understand what that means. It's loose and sloppy, but it's got a tightness to it, it's got a feel to it that is exceptional. Although both Kenny Jones and Simon Phillips, and now Zach, and I've worked with all of them, are all phenomenal drummers. I don't think anybody can touch Keith just because Keith was completely and utterly unique. They have gone through many changes. Obviously now the difference as well is that John Entwistle is gone and Pino Palladino is playing bass with them now. They're still absolutely fantastic. And I saw them last year and was completely blown away. They were just tremendous, tremendous, and seem to have lost none of the energy and power, excitement that I still remember as a 12-year-old, all those years ago when I Can't Explain.
The line gets repeated over and over and over in the song until it becomes almost like a mantra. And it's probably the last classic Who song. 6 minutes long, the pace goes up and down, it's very well controlled, has a beginning, has its middle, has its end, and drives along. So it's, yes, the last great Who song.
The Who, yeah, they have a unique place in rock history for me, definitely.
They are mighty. They are big, meaty and bouncy.